Hey campers, Patrick with Uncle Bill's Camping, and today we're talking about this little two-way radio from Baofeng that packs a really big punch. So stick around for a minute, get comfortable, and let's check this radio out together. Baofeng radios. Some people love them, some people hate them. The FCC's tried to ban them, so why would I be doing a review about these radios? Well, it's simple. They're inexpensive, they're easy to use, and they work well. Before we start, I want to issue a bit of a disclaimer. These radios may not be legal in your area. You may be required to get a license to operate these radios. And even with the license, the equipment itself may not be compliant with FCC rules and regulations. So do your homework and know what you're getting into. With all that said, let's go ahead, start our review, and see what's inside the box. Alright, so nothing special here about the box itself. Basic cardboard box, got a picture of the radio on the outside. The nickname for this radio is the Baofeng Mini. If you're going to be doing any kind of Googling for software or to do any research, just use the model number, which is BF-T1. You'll get better results. But we'll go ahead and open this up, see what's inside. So, instructions. It's a fairly thick little book. Looks like we have all the features, things like that in the back, troubleshooting, general operation. Something that does appear to be a little bit better this time around, and if you've dealt with Baofeng radios, you'll know exactly what I'm talking about. Some of the older user manuals are in broken English or Chinese English, and it can be a little bit misleading, kind of hard to understand. This looks like it's very plain, easy to read English, so good job for Baofeng stepping up their game and putting out a little bit better literature. Next up, we have the charging cable, or excuse me, this is the programming cable. Let's not get these confused. Don't use this for charging your radio. Just use this for programming. Put it somewhere safe. This has a microchip inside of it that you need to be able to program this radio. So, put this away. Use a regular micro USB cable to charge your radio. Save yourself a headache down the road because you're not going to be able to program your radio without this. We, of course, have regular mic and headphone jack right here to be able to plug into. Normally, I don't use these, but this radio does have an FM radio built into it. So, if I don't use this, I could probably use regular headphones, but it's nice that they throw them in. All right, so we have the actual charging jack here, micro USB. Nothing special. It was probably about a foot long or so. You use whatever you use to charge your phone. If you use an Android device or something of that nature with micro USB. Wall charger. Again, I probably won't use this. I'll just use whatever I have laying around already at the house. This is kind of bulky. I have a bolt-on battery clip and a lanyard. I don't know if I'll use this or not. The radio is kind of small, so if I don't use the belt clip, I probably will use this. And last but not least, we have the radio itself. Not very big. Is what I expect. I didn't expect it to be very big, but still kind of surprising when you look at this compared to something like the BF-888S radio, which is just a big, very utilitarian radio. This is small. It's going to fit right in your shirt pocket, so you'll definitely need to use the belt clip or the lanyard with something like this to keep track of it. First impression of this is that it feels very dense. It's got a good weight to it. It's nice and solid. You can tell that all the internal components are just really packed in there nice and tight. I was expecting this to maybe feel more like a kid's toy, but with the weight, I mean, it's just got a good mass to it. It feels like it could take a solid hit. You could drop it and it's not going to mess it up. On the top here, we got the flashlight, and upon first inspection, I kind of thought, well, maybe this was the volume adjustment knob, or maybe even the channel select knob, but it's neither of those things. It just appears that way. Of course, we have the on-off switch here and the stubby antenna. And this is my first radio that's actually had a stubby antenna on it, so I'm kind of anxious to see how well this performs. Okay, so moving on to the side, it's pretty simple here. We got the PTT button right here in the orange SOS. Something I like about the PTT button here, the push to talk, is there's actually a switch here and there, which makes it a little bit easier to push and communicate with. You don't have to find the sweet spot. So wherever your thumb is at on here, your finger, you're going to be able to depress it pretty easy and not have to put a lot of work into it. You also have the SOS button here. And what that does is it's going to key up any other companion radios like this, regardless of the channel it's on. So even if you guys are on separate channels, if you hit this, it's going to bring the other radio, companion radio, onto your channel. So I guess that's there, you know, just in case of an emergency, or if the channels, you know, get out of sync, then you can go ahead and still be able to communicate with other people in your party regardless in an emergency. So moving on to the other side, we have the mic and headset jack, which uses a standard headphone jack as opposed to the double that most radios use. Now I'm curious to see if a standard set of earbuds will work with this, which will be nice because it does have an FM radio on it, so it would be you know, convenient to be able to use a higher quality headset to be able to listen to music with. All right, so moving on to the back, we have this sealed battery compartment. Now, a lot of radios just have a detachable battery where you could just interchange them. This one actually happens to be a sealed battery inside of it. So you have these 4 screws that you have to take off to open up the battery compartment and unplug the battery. Now these 2 top screws up here are the ones that you would detach and run through to fasten your belt clip to it if you decided to do so. So moving on to the bottom, the design looks like it would have permitted cradle charging, or at least they had planned to implement cradle charging at one time and decided against it in favor of a more readily available micro USB charger. I like this because everyone has a micro USB charger and cables. This makes charging just a lot more simpler. Everybody's got, you know, micro USB, car chargers, things like that. You're not going to have to buy a special piece of equipment or a cradle USB charger to be able to charge up in your car. So I can really appreciate that this radio has that. So moving on to the front, we have a backlit display that has the battery status, the channel ID, and frequency information. In the center, there's the channel select button, and these are also used for scrolling through the menu items and adjusting the volume. Next is the menu button that lets you adjust and access many features of this radio. The flashlight button, which is standard for Baofeng. This isn't very bright, but it will get the job done. I don't want to shine that directly into the camera, but as you can see, it's not super bright, but like I said, it'll get the job done, or at least help you find what you're looking for in a pinch. All right, so up next we have the FM button, and it's pretty self-explanatory, but I like that they gave this its own dedicated button, especially because they have a regular headphone jack over here. So instead of maybe using the earpiece that came with it, you could take your Beats or whatever headphones you use and plug them in. That way, if you want to listen to a little bit of music, you can just pop in your earbuds and listen to the radio or catch a ball game. You know, even if you don't want to do that, you can just listen to it through the speaker on the walkie, and you know, that's plenty loud, I guess, if you're hiking or just, you know, chilling out in your tent or in the hammock, you know, listening to something. So the last thing we're going to cover is the volume button here. And if you just give that a tap, and you can use the center button here to go ahead and adjust your volume up or down. And if you keep the button depressed, you can just open up the channel that you're on and it'll monitor it for you. That way, if there's a signal that's maybe not coming through so strong, you'll be able to hear it. But either way, that wraps up this part of the video. What we're going to do is move on to the fun stuff and you know, do a little bit of field testing. Okay guys, so we're about to start our range test, and I just want to say something before we get started. And I'm sure I'll hear about it in the comment section. But I am not what you would consider a ham radio operator. I do not have a vast knowledge base of radios. The only thing I care about is, do they work and what kind of range I can get out of it. I don't care if I can hit a repeater 5 miles down the road or 20 or 30 miles down the road. The only thing I care about is how these work in a real world situation. When I'm at my campsite, How much range can I expect to get out of these? If I'm in the city, how much range can I expect to get out of these? And that's how we're going to do the test. I'm going to do the test just like I did with the BF-888S. I'm going to leave somebody here at the house. I'm going to get in my Jeep and I'm going to start driving, and I'm going to try and check in about every quarter mile or eighth of a mile and see how well it works. That's the only way I really know how to do it. And that, to me, gives the best result on what you can expect out of these radios. So with that being said, I'm going to go downstairs, jump in the Jeep, start driving, and we're going to do some radio checks. All right, guys, so we got our camera set up, we got our radio. Let's go ahead and hit the road and get to our first location and start doing this radio test. So we've made it to our first location, which is about an eighth of a mile away from the house. We're going to go ahead and call in for a radio check, see if anybody's listening to us. Mobile to home base, do you have a copy?
Copy that, mobile.
All right, it's pretty clear, and we can go ahead, head on to our next location. So we're a quarter mile away from the house. We're going to go ahead and call in, see if anybody is there to greet us. Mobile to home base for a radio check. Do you have a copy?
Copy that, mobile.
All right, so quarter mile, we have pretty good reception. We're going to go ahead, head on to our next location. All right, so we are roughly 3/8 of a mile away from the house. We're going to go ahead, call in, and do a radio check. Mobile to home base, do you have a copy?
Copy that, mobile.
All right, so still loud and clear at 3/8 of a mile. We're going to go ahead and move on to our next location and see what we get. We're at the half-mile mark right now, and we're going to go ahead and call in, do a radio check, see if anybody is there. Mobile to home base for a radio check. Do you have a copy?
Copy that, mobile.
All right, it's a little bit staticky, but we're going to go ahead and push on a little bit further, see if we get a signal. So we're at about 3/4 mile mark right now. We're going to go ahead, call in, and see what we get. Mobile to home base for radio check. Do you have a copy? Mobile to home base for a radio check. Do you have a copy? All right, 3/4 mile mark, no bueno. Good at a half mile, no problem. 3/4 of a mile, not so good. So we're gonna go ahead, head back, wrap up this video. All right, guys, so just wrapped up the range test on it, and my thoughts on it are, I really like the fact that I can get the range out of this that I do. Was I expecting a whole lot out of it? No, it has a fixed antenna. It's a stubby antenna. So I'm not thinking that it's going to get what the BF-888S is. Half a mile, I'm pretty impressed with that, especially inside the city. So, would I recommend this to somebody? Well, if I needed it for an emergency situation, this is not the radio I would count on for that. I would probably stick with the BF-888S. If I'm needing something for around the campground, to communicate with my family, when I'm out hiking, to keep track of my group, or something of that nature, absolutely. I definitely recommend it. You're talking about, anywhere from 12 to 15 bucks per radio. You can't go wrong with it. It's easy to use. It's very ergonomic. Solid as a rock for a little radio. I mean, it's not waterproof, but I mean, you're talking about a $12 or $15 radio that's giving you fantastic range. It's still going to beat any of the radios that you're going to buy out of the store. Unidens, Cobras, things like that. It's gonna beat the death out of them. So, with that said, yeah, I would definitely recommend this radio. All right, guys, that about wraps it up. Please feel free to leave a comment, a like, or dislike, and don't forget to subscribe. Either way, this is Patrick from Uncle Bill's Camping. Thank you for taking the time to look at my videos, and I will see you the next time around.